All right, good evening, Indigo Children Radio listeners, and welcome to tonight's show with a special guest who's returning to be with us for the second time. There's not very many announcements that we're going to cover today, except for one thing I did want to cover real quickly before I introduce our guest, is today I mass PM'd everybody on Facebook. Now, first time ever. The reason why I did that is because, as many of you know and as many of you seem to agree with, Facebook has been rigged in such a way where if we're not all actively talking to each other, I don't see or hear from 90% of you, and 90% of you do not hear or see from myself. So that is the reason why that happened, and I feel compelled to say that each one of us are going to have to take it upon ourselves to visit each other's pages in a proactive manner. So that's essentially the only message that I have, followed by, I generally am not on the Google Plus Hangout community. We are using this, so if you want to get a hold of me, your best chance of getting a hold of myself or anyone else at the show is going to be through the Indigo Children Radio page on Facebook, or you can email indigochildrenradio@live.com. The Google Plus account is generally not tied to anything else except for the live feed that we are working with tonight. That's essentially all I have for announcements. For those of you that have come here, I hope that the live feed is getting out to you and that you don't have to do anything special in order to access this link. If you do, I will go ahead and replace the links while the show is going and hopefully get you a link that is actually going out to the YouTube platform. So without further ado, I would like to introduce tonight's guest, Robin Hannon. She joins us again. We're very honored to welcome you back to the show for the second time. Robin was born in Westchester, New York, and raised in Manhattan proper, where she spent most of her life until she moved with her husband of 38 years. Robin has 2 wonderful daughters and 3 incredible grandchildren that bring great joy to her life. She has followed a healing path for nearly 20 years, and her many noteworthy achievements include a bachelor's and master's degree in divinity, to include ordination through Nova Kostria International Outreach Ministry, Reiki treatments to patients of FMH Regional Cancer Center in Franklin, Maryland, freely volunteering her talents for all patients in need at the Francis Scott Key Wellness Center in Frederick, Maryland, and she has had the great honor of working with Dr. Bob Harold at Seasons Hospice of Baltimore, Maryland, providing Reiki treatments to dying patients, as well as educating Seasons Hospice staff in Reiki techniques. Robin continues to have has the great honor of officiating and coordinating a host of successful weddings while implementing a wide variety of preferences, and the website I will mention here shortly. As a Reiki practitioner, Robin holds a number of certifications in 6 different forms of Reiki. She focuses her disciplines on journey work, which encompasses self-reflection, breath work, lucid dreaming, meditation, and visualization. Please visit her website, and this is the part where you guys want to take this down or go to the Facebook page where you will find the links. It's www.abidingreiki.com. That's www.abidingreiki.com, and a beautiful website, www.abidinglovewed.com, as in Abiding Love Weddings, but it's www.abidinglovewed.com. Very attractive site where you can learn more and contact Robin about that aspect. Also, please find Robin on Facebook. Just go to Facebook, top search bar, /Abiding Reiki. Same thing, Facebook, the top search bar, Abiding Love Weddings. And for her book, which you will find the link in tonight's Facebook event and show description. Also search for it on Kindle by searching the Heart Song of Anekehee, and that is Anekehee. And with that, Robin, we would like to welcome you to the show.
Hi, Lucian, and thank you for having me again. It's just been a great honor to work with Lucian. He's absolutely wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to talking with him more about what I'm doing right now. Basically, I've written a book. It's called The Heart Song of Anekehee. And it's based on this journey work that I have done. And for people who do not understand what a journey work is or what it means, journey work is something that you do with your breath, and as well with visualization techniques, and as well a certain type of focusing. And in this place of calm that you can get to, you can in fact go to find answers for yourself and for other people. So that's the premise of this kind of work. You'll find it also in cancer centers and with people who are ill, where they'll be told, visualize your tumor shrinking, visualize yourself being better. So one of the things that you'll find about journey work is it's very much a visualization type process, along with this technique of what I call specialized breathing. And it's really in the eye of the beholder, because each person is going to see it through their own eyes. This book is my journey through my eyes. A little bit more about this. I found that I was more open to these kinds of things after 2000. I'd had a near-death experience where I was being operated on, and I think I died on the table for a bit. And when I came back, my mind had suddenly expanded and opened to things I really had not understood or really thought about before. I was starting to have some very intense dreams, for example, and some of them were actually more than dreams. They actually had a synchronicity in real life. I found that in using Reiki as well, I was more grounded, I was more well, and this led to these thoughts that I have put down in this book. So briefly, I'm going to go a little bit through the book and explain what I've done here, and then open this up for questions or whatever people would like to talk about.
Yes,
but for example, in chapter 1, it's called Stories from the Other Side. Now, most of these were dreams that I've had, but not all of them. They were either dreams, or I deliberately did what I would call a vision journey to find out answers for a situation. So in this particular chapter, there are several of these kinds of stories. One is my own near-death experience. There was some memories of my grandmother, and subsequently dreams of her after she passed. Even my dog, believe it or not. And there were a couple of journeys, one to my father and one to my mother. Basically, in the journey to my father in particular, he had been suffering from a form of severe dementia, but it came on very suddenly in the last year or two of his life. And I wanted to talk to him and reach his spirit, because our spirits are not as affected by what our bodies are. Our minds may be affected, but our spirits are still our spirits. So I deliberately did this particular journey where I did some breath work, got myself centered, got myself into this place, and went to speak to my father in this place I kind of created in my mind's eye. In this one in particular, I went to what looked like a large pond, and he was sitting in it, and the water was kind of running over him, over the rocks and over him, and he said, "Come on in." And when I looked at him closely, he was a lot younger. He was, I would say, in his 40s, maybe 30s. But I knew, obviously, it was my father. It's just kind of strange to see him looking like that. And I sat down next to him, and we began to talk. And he basically went and explained to me what it was like for him to have this dementia. So it was very interesting because he said that as a person goes through this period of dementia and it gets worse, a black veil is woven between one's spirit and one's body. And at first it's got a lot of light. So it's a loose weave. You can still see through it. And at this point, the person will still have most of their wits. As this veil progresses and becomes darker, less light is then let in. And the spirit and body begin to separate more. So the spirit starts to live outside the physical person, but it's joined by some sort of cord, almost like an embryonic cord, but it seemed to be pulsating. It seemed to have more light to it. Again, the cord is strong in a normal person, but as this veil progresses, it starts to shrink and it starts to fail. Eventually, the veil is completely dark and the cord is gone. So at that point, the soul leaves the body. And this is what he explained to me. And after that, we spoke of all kinds of things. Things that really needed to be said, whatever we needed to forgive each other for. We told each other how much we loved each other, and I thanked him for being him. And we kind of just sat there in this pool. So that was a vision for my father. Another one was my mother. Now, at this point, my mother had been in several comas. And this was, I think, probably the second coma she was in. And it had been nearly, I think, at least a few weeks. And there was really a question as to what we should do. Her living will did not want tubes or whatever. But, you know, the thought of leaving her there to starve didn't go over very well either. And my poor sister and I, we weren't sure what to do. So again, I said, okay, I'm going to do this journey and see. So I found this comfortable place I started in, and finally I could see my mother. And she was young, again, strangely enough, and I'm not sure why. And she was dressed in a suit of royal blue with matching shoes and jewelry. One thing about my mother, she had a very astute sense of fashion. So it made all the sense in the world. And she was with my father, who had passed by then, and they were in a delicatessen with my uncle and my grandmother and my grandfather. So I sat down with them and I said, Mom, I don't know what to do. Your body's in the hospital. Are you ready to leave this world? Because, you know, we have to decide whether to feed you or not. She said, no, I've been dancing the mambo and eating my favorite foods, but I'm not ready to die. Then she said, I'll be back in, I think it was like a week or something like that. Don't pull the plug and don't feed me. So I said, so you're telling me about a week? She said, yes, I'll be back in a week. I said, 7 days. Yes, Robin, 7 days. Fine. So I went to my sister and I said, look, she's gone this long. Let's give her 7 days. Either she'll make it or she won't, but let's give her a chance. A week to the day, she came out of the coma. Now, my sister was with her when this happened, and she had asked my mother in frustration, while she was still comatose, I guess, do you want to die? It's time to get up. And all of a sudden, my mother opened her eyes and says, of course I don't want to die. So the interesting thing about this particular chapter is the synchronicity of all this. Okay, so that's what that chapter is about. In the next chapter, I was talking about the art of forgiveness. And one thing I've learned about forgiveness, it's never something that we as human beings want to do. There's a sense of wanting justice. Everybody does. So-and-so did such and such. How dare they? Or They don't deserve my forgiveness. Okay? And what this chapter is doing is talking a little bit about how and why forgiveness is important. And for an example, one of them is about demanding vindication. And what I wrote is, when we are wounded, we want to demand vindication. We want to be right. We want somebody to say, you know, we're sorry. That's normal. That's human. But the truth of the matter is that when we often demand things, we don't get them. And harping on it tends to serve no purpose other than to aggravate us. What I say is that forgiveness means letting it go and not necessarily demanding our rights. Now that's hard as a human being to wrap your mind around.
True.
But it's important to understand that forgiveness is not necessarily a feeling. It's a decision. So we may feel the same way. Well, gee whiz, I don't want to forgive them. They're a this, that, blah, 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 blah. You know how we are, okay? But we make a decision. It's a cold-blooded decision because forgiveness in us will breed health, physical and emotional and mental health. The more we hold on to things, the less emotional, physical, spiritual health we have. So it's in our best interest. And in another chapter, I talk about what forgiveness is, and I said, it's not plastering a smile on your face and making nice, all right? And it's not necessarily a form of self-sacrifice. It's not pretending everything's fine, and it's not a sign of weakness. What forgiveness is, it's a form of realism. It allows us to see our lives as it really is in that moment of time. It doesn't deny, minimize, or justify what's been done or the pain we've suffered. But it does allow us to look at our wounds and let them go so that it's not an open sore that we constantly are having chafe against us.
Do you feel like forgiveness is tough for us to do while we're still in the body because our concept of being out of body and not really dying is such a difficult thing for us to grasp?
I think that's part of it. I also just think it's human nature to want to be right. And the sense of wanting that justice. We all want justice. How many of us have said, it's not fair? It's not fair. Come on, we don't have that little kid in us yelling that? Of course we do. We want things to be fair. We want things to be equitable. So yes, you're right. That's part of it. And it's also the sense of, I need this. I need this. I deserve it. But my concept is to go beyond what you think you deserve to what's best for your spirit, if that makes any sense to you.
It does, but I think at times it definitely gets in my way because I think part of the walk that a lot of us have here is our three-dimensional selves are so in the way at times with our connection to spirit. How in your book, I know we're talking about this journey work and the breath work, how thin do you think that veil really is? Because I know that you know how thin it is. How would you explain to people, as per your book, how thin the veil is?
In the right moment and in that breath work, I would say thin enough that I can pass through and come back again. Mm-hmm. And I've had instances where I've gone and, say, helped someone who either needs to pass over or is in the process of passing over or has just passed over, and they look at me and say, what on earth are you doing here? So it can become very thin, and sometimes what I feel when I'm dealing with this is a sense of concern from the other person. How are you going to get back? Are you going to be okay? How did you get here? And I always, assure them, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I know the way back. Now, I will say that in learning journey work, you do not start out with this. Okay? You are not going to try to start out with going past this veil. When I teach it, I teach people something very simple. For example, we're going to go and talk to your favorite animal. Maybe you have a dog or a cat or a horse, goldfish. So you want to start with something a little more simple than going beyond the veil, because that is more complex, and you probably would need a facilitator who knows what they're doing in case you forget how to come back. So what I would say is it's something that I wouldn't recommend you do just off the cuff, if that's making any sense to you.
It does, it does. Now, what about the people that are asking themselves, how do I get a start on my own journey work? I want to see through the other side of this veil. I'm taking so much hope that there is an abundance of life after so-called death, after the transition. What does your book have to say to those people that are going to start this out? We know that there's hope. We know that we can pass through this veil. The discipline necessary to get there is akin to what, Robin? What would you say?
Well, it's like any other muscle. Imagine, if you were, that you wanted to become a weightlifter. You're not going to start off with 200-pound barbells, are you? You're going to start off with 3 pounds and build up your muscles. Mm-hmm. In the same way, when you're dealing with something like this, you need to build up your muscles. And how do you do that? First of all, you need to build up your tolerance for the breath work involved, because it's a different kind of breathing to get yourself into that safe place. In my way of doing this, I am asking for help. Now, that help can come from many different sources, whether you believe in Jesus, God, Buddha, I don't care, whatever your belief system is, you're wanting to ask for some help. You're not wanting to do this just with yourself. In my particular belief system, there are 3 levels of existence. You've got the world above, which is God, all right, angels, deities, all right. You've got the world here that we all see here every day. The world under would be more like lucid dreaming, all right. So, for example, if I were to go to the underworld, I might dream that I can fly, or a lucid dream that I can fly. Anything, I could turn into an eagle if I wanted to down there. So, depending on what I'm doing, I'm going to go to one of these places in my mind's eye. What I would say is learn the breath techniques and practice going to these places in your mind first for brief periods of time. Just go there and come back, go there and come back, go there and come back. What I tell my students is, if you want to go to the upper world, imagine that you're going up an escalator, and then just come right back down. Imagine that, and if you're going to go to the lower world, imagine that you're on a slide or something. You go to the lower world, come back. And you always come back the way you went. The same way you came, you go. So if you go down the slide, you go up the slide. If you go down the escalator, you go up the escalator, blah, blah, blah. I would say you take it in slow little bites. Ask for someone to facilitate it with you who knows what they're doing. Someone who's an experienced journey work person. I would not suggest you do it by yourself. And build up your tolerance. And yes, you will start to get to this place. And you may find that initially it just comes in dreams. You'll start to dream about people that you want to hear from. So I'd say the key is patience with yourself and the process. You don't want to force it to happen, but you kind of just want to let this happen.
I have a question I'd like to ask you, Robin. In your experience, how often are people being contacted by what we perceive to be that random entity, that random person, that random animal in the dream? How much of this is deliberate, reaching out to you? We wake up in the morning and we go on the old, it was just a dream. How often that is real communication?
You know, it's very individual. It's hard to say, but I'm a firm believer in paying attention to those kinds of dreams. In my thought process, if you're having that dream, there's a reason you're having that dream. It's probably someone trying to connect to you in some way, shape, or form. So you do want to pay attention to that.
And going back a little bit to what you said, I wanted to hint on a little bit, what can we tell the listeners about this silver cord? We've heard it referenced before by other speakers, by books. Some people go out of their body, they don't see it. Some people do. Can it be severed? Is it there? And have you experienced this cord?
I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Can it be severed? I wouldn't suggest it. It is the cord that feeds your spirit while you're still in this body and keeps your spirit tied to it. I would imagine if you severed the cord, you might physically stop breathing. I don't know. I wouldn't try it.
Right.
It seems to be that this is it's a cord that actually feeds your body, spirit, and soul. It's going back and forth, and it's essential to every person. Even when people have talked about going out of body and going here and going there, that cord is always there. And it's one of these cords that you could go 3 times around the earth and there'd be plenty of cord. But to sever it, no, I would not suggest you sever your own cords. Not a wise move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. What about, can you speak to people's experience or this idea that these types of events will be so fearful because we read these books about what's called astral wildlife and that there's things out there that are negative? I have not had such experience. What do you say to that? Do you believe, have you experienced that there are beings out there that may not necessarily have your best interest at heart contacting you? What can we say to either just speak to that or dispel this completely?
Okay, I would say that it's not something I would dispel completely.
Okay.
But I would not go looking for it behind every pillar and post either. The way I look at it is this. Before I go into this, for me anyway, there is a specialized routine I do in my prayers and other things that I do that create a sacred space. And one of the intents is nothing bad is going to get into this sacred space of mine.
Okay.
All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, I'm asking for help. Creator, help me. Angels, help me. Whatever my belief system is, help me remain safe. And oftentimes I'm taking them with me on this journey. So it's not just me. It's me and whatever I'm asking to come with me that goes with me. So there's a sacred space idea. So you can create your sacred space any way that feels good to you, that's sacred to you. Some people might use holy water. Some people might sage. Some people might, I don't know, do some sort of Buddhist chant. Whatever it is you want to do. But the idea is you're creating a sacred place that's safe, and you're saying, within this place, I am safe. Now, if you go into these realms and you find something nasty, you've got protectors. You're not there by yourself. From time to time, I've seen a couple of nasties, but I've never had them harm me because they simply aren't able to. I won't let that happen, and neither will the things I'm protected by. So I would say if you've got a fear of this, you create what you fear. So if you're going to go in a fearful mode, you might create it and have it happen. I would say the first step might be to undo the fear mode, because fear is faith, just like faith is faith. The only difference between fear, faith, and faith is one is negative and one is positive, but they're 2 sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. So what you fear is what you're going to manifest.
I love that point. And for those of you who have followed this show for a while, and then I dropped off the air, I have to tell you this. Everything I said on the show 2 years ago, forget about it. I've basically deleted about 6 segments from past Indigo Children radio shows because either what I said was completely wrong, misguided, highly opinionated, and speaking to what you just said about faith, those people who have been listening to this show, I have this feeling would say, oh, Lucian, very, very critical, open-minded path walker will say, now I have to embrace, and I tell you this, listeners, sincerely, as you have not heard from me in some time, I must embrace what Robin is saying. Further, nobody was more put off than myself, I claim, by this idea I would read many times, go with what resonates with you, etc., etc., etc. And I thought, isn't that just the way of not telling us exactly how to get things done, exactly how to out-of-body experience? And now I must say to you, in all honesty, having evolved past that, faith, as odd as it sounds, coming from me, given my past shows, has been probably the key, we'll say, to many doors for myself. And you have brought it up here now, talking about fearing this, having faith be the opposite side, the catalyst of action. I agree with you 100%, and I myself actually had to change this. I really thought that all of the individuals that were posing this idea, that you just simply had to believe something or go with traditions or elements of religion or elements of occult philosophy that resonated with you was going to be the most powerful. I thought, this is the way people are basically blowing me off. I wanted to know what time of day, what time of night, what color clothes to wear, and let's do this thing. And from what you're saying, you're also confirming that we are so powerful. If we can create this idea in our minds, we can experience this in the dreaming world, the upper world, and the lower world, as you put it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the reason I'm not being specific is because, understand, this is my journey, and if I tell you what I do, that may not work for you. I come from a mentality of where I've been brought up and my experiences. So if I said to you, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go and call the north, call the south, call the east, call the west, above, below, and within, all right? And then I want you to make sure you start in the east, go south, west, north. Wait a minute. Why? That's not my culture. So it's not appropriate for me to just spell out, this is how you do it, because you're not going to relate to that. You might relate to something else. But there are certain common themes, which is that anytime you're doing this kind of work, no matter what you're doing, fear can't be a factor. Because if you allow yourself to fear, you've already fed the thing that you are afraid of and made it stronger. So fear has no place. If you have faith to fear, and this is in my book, and I've said it, if you have faith to fear, you have faith to have faith.
I want to say real quickly to the listeners, it seems like everybody is having trouble getting into Google Hangout. Really quickly, Robin, I'm sorry. It's just that this is basically coming through right now. I do not believe it's anyone's fault, but people on their ends, respectively, are being told that they're having trouble. Roger had trouble. Bonnie had trouble. Another individual is having trouble. I don't know if this is their issue. I'm trying to give people the link to where we're at right now. However, it's not being disputed that the YouTube link is live and is working just fine. But to those of you dealing with the Google Plus, I apologize, and I really wish that I could bring you all in here. The people that did make it through had to restart, sign out, sign back in, etc., etc. But it seems to be a plethora of warning, or not warning, but error messages out there. Robin, going back to your book, can you put into context for us from your culture and your experience exactly what the idea of a heart song is and how we relate that to the path that you're walking and the way you're communicating these ideas that come from you, but they seem to be very universal, which is something that we can embrace and something that we can come together on and say, you know, yes, this is great. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What's the inspiration behind this heart song?
Well, for me, the song of my heart has always been two or three things. One, to be a light and to be a blessing. So part of the song of my heart is to reach out through this book as one woman's journey to say, I hope that some of this reaches you. I hope some of this blesses you. I hope that you can enjoy some of these thoughts, that they will give you another perspective, open your eyes to thoughts maybe you haven't thought of before. So part of my song, when I say heart song, I think of the joy that this brings. My heart literally is singing, if that makes any sense. It's going, because I'm sharing something that is personal, but yet I'm hoping that it brings something to somebody else that's going to lift them up and give them another perspective. Do I think of this as the absolute truth? Oh, heck no. I mean, I do not. I see it as my truth that I share with you to do what you want with. So that is the first song for me,
Right.
of my heart. The second song is just to simply be a vessel. And in this book, there's been a lot of things where I've gotten from many sources about all different types of topics that were spoken to me, about forgiveness, about being the light, about relationships with Creator, about even talking to nature, transitions, fear and faith. All these issues are pertinent. So that song is to say, come join me. There's hope. There's something beyond what you understand if I can give somebody that hope. It's the second song for me. And the third song is just to sort of share ideas in general. I'm someone who loves to collect ideas from every walk of life because in my mind there is no wrong. We are all blind people around a big elephant feeling different sections of that elephant. For all I know, my book is the foot. But I want to hear what the tail feels like. What does the ear feel like? Mm-hmm. What does this elephant feel like to you? So that sharing is a joy. So that is my heart's song, if I were to put it in. And I put it in musical terms because I'm a musical person. I love to sing. And to me, we all of people have a song to their soul. Everyone's song is different, but there's music in everyone's soul to some degree. And learning about their songs and sharing mine creates a symphony of songs. That to me is amazing. So that is why, for me, I put this down as the Heart Song of Anekehee.
Anekehee, yes. And for those of you, that is how you pronounce the word. One of the biggest fears of being live on any kind of media is mispronouncing someone's name or a concept or a topic that they're talking about. And I think that I have done that. Anekehee, I apologize. And I
No, not at all. It's not an easy name.
As we spoke the other day, I said, I wonder if that's going to happen.
And also, it's Dr. Harold Bob, not Bob Harold.
Did I do?
So, Dr. Bob, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
Dr. Bob.
But no, Anekehee is not an easy name. But it is definitely the song of my heart that I'm trying to reach out to others with.
I understand that. And, you know, the great thing is, also going back again to my own self-experience, is I didn't realize when I started the show that I was relaying my experience, which is true. I tell you that it's true, but it is not the truth the way people want to receive it. So I can only offer you a perspective. And at the beginning of the show, when we first started it, it was having a great experience. and we're being joined by Jamie Keelan. Thanks for coming in, Jamie. Give us 1 second. By the way, those of you who are asking questions, those of you who ask questions in the chat who are joining the Hangout, go ahead and ask your questions, and I can bring you on if you'd like to speak to Robin yourself, or I can read the questions, and you can drop those questions in there. Just let me know if you want to talk to Robin, and we are going to go ahead and take questions towards the end of the show. But about experiences and truth, I can give you my experience, which is true, and it happened to me, is the only reason I would actually open my mouth and say it to somebody, because it's so profound, and I feel essentially that this is kind of what we're getting at when we're talking about the heart song. Right, and Robin is trying to answer these questions via the chat as well and talk at the same time. Robin, would you like to take a couple of questions now?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, Roger did ask a question. Roger, I think everybody's actually on right now. I can turn Jamie on as well. I just muted Jamie. Jamie, are you there?
I think you just muted him.
Jamie, are you on?
Hello?
Hey,
Hi, Jamie.
And Roger,
Hey.
are you on as well? It doesn't show he's muted.
I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Jamie, go ahead. You're on here with Robin. I know a couple of the other individuals in the Hangout have stated that they don't have audio at this moment in time. So, Jamie, welcome to the show. It's good to meet you, and I'm interested in hearing your question. Please go ahead.
Well, it's not so much a question. It was just that whole idea of people given this program of fear. Because I honestly believe that has always been what's controlled people, has always been fear. But more prevalent is the fact that even, I mean, what even is my question? I guess it's that people don't, I mean, people aren't going forward because they're scared of what lies beyond what they don't know. So they're told not to question, so they don't go any further, because what isn't what they don't know, what is what they don't know is something that might harm them, so they don't want to go there. So it's kind of like we're always going to be in this same position where we are, because we're too scared of what we could become, because who knows why, but obviously there's somewhere that we're not going to get to, and all I would like to know is what on earth are we going to do about that?
Well, you know, the idea of fear is strong. I mean, we all have our self-preservation instincts. And yes, you're right, there are people who are literally frozen with fear. But if we take the idea that negative fear is a form of faith, then perhaps we can start to flex that muscle a little bit. So if a person is afraid of a larger thing, we can start with a smaller thing, whatever they can do. Perhaps, for example, they are afraid of dogs. All right, well, what if they got within 20 feet of a dog? How about 10?
Or put their head inside the mouth of the dog.
Well, I wouldn't suggest that if they're afraid of dogs. But my point is, you gradually expose yourself.
Yeah, you're so right.
And hopefully, as you expose yourself, you become less frightened of whatever it is. My theory is that there are always going to be people that allow fear to contain them. What I'm hoping my book will do is give them reasons to look at, to not fear.
If you don't know, if what you're in fear of, if fear is programmed into you and you are programmed with fear of something that you don't know, then how can you face the fear if it's fear of something that you don't actually know about? if your biggest fear is of the unknown,
So you're
then
talking about
you can't possibly, how could you face your fear if
you
you
mean it's
don't
like
know what you're scared of?
you're talking about like a subconscious fear?
Go ahead, Jamie. Go ahead, Jamie.
I'm thinking he's talking more about a subconscious fear.
Jamie, can you hear me?
Oops, where'd he go?
Anyway, Robin, go ahead and take that question and keep running
All right,
with it.
well,
I'm going to get Jamie back on here.
You know, the thing about a subconscious fear is he's right. You can't face what you don't understand and you don't know. All right? But if we think about this, every moment that we utilize in positive faith to produce positive results is one less moment based on fear. So what we can start with is what we do know. What are we fearing that we know about? Take that negative energy, harness it, and turn it around. Again, start with what you know, because he's absolutely correct. You can't change what you don't know. And if there's a subconscious fear there that you haven't learned or you are not aware of for some reason, you can't expect to work on. And if you're programmed into fear, you're going to see that fear pattern as normal. So what I would say is, since you're in a position where you've been programmed like that and you're not sure, deal with what you do know. Many people want a quick fix.
You're going to have to tell me your name before I continue this conversation with you, by the way.
My name is Robin.
Robin.
Yes.
I have to inform you that I came to the conclusion a long time ago that I don't and will never know anything.
Okay.
So I can't possibly know what it is that I'm scared of. So why, I mean, it's, you know, I'm not in fear of anything, but I understand that people are controlled by fear. So how do you do that? I mean, the only reason I've ever been scared is when you look up at a really tall building. You know, when a building's really tall and you look up at it and it's like, whoa, that's probably the scariest thing in the world for me. But some people are like scared of death, and death is used against people so much.
Yes,
and pain, and love is used so much against people that it hurts. But how? I mean, it's impossible. Like, I mean, you're right. You're right in the fact that that it's like, you know, the mental program of don't allow suffering, don't invoke suffering. But to some, they're so used to it, and I've seen it. I see it in people who you just meet, like not friends, not family, but people who you just meet. You know, that it's just in them. Like they have been programmed throughout their entire lives, like through possibly. I mean, I can't say for sure, but things like, say, Disney, MTV, that invokes this feeling, this sort of one culture. And what on earth do you do about that? I mean, fair enough on a personal level, but what do you do about it, man?
These are good questions, Jamie. I'm going to go ahead and place you on mute, let Robin respond, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on to a couple other questions if you don't mind, Jamie. But thanks for coming on.
That's fine. My things aren't even questions, so mute me whenever you want, man.
No, please. Thank you so much. I just don't want to sound rude. Robin, you have a response for that, and then we'll move on to a couple of other questions that come through chat. I want to get them out there on the air so that people are listening can go ahead and hear them as well, because they're not going to see some of this chat action. Thanks, Jamie.
Well, you know, Jamie's thought of process it's a really wonderful, unique thought.
It's real good.
It really is, because what he's in essence saying is, I've come to the conclusion that I don't know anything.
Right.
But
why?
What's nice about that is he's out of the way. All right. What he's in essence done is taken his ego completely out of this picture. I don't know anything. I admit. So how do I fix what I don't know?
Right.
Wonderful. Believe it or not, that's a perfect start right there. Because now that his ego is out of the way and he's not looking at his mind, that's when creator, spirit, whatever you want to call it, gets to come in and go, okay, Jamie, you want to know? Let me show you. When we get our own ideas out of the way and we have no idea how to fix it, perfect. That's when we become the best catalyst for creator. I don't know if that answers his question, but that certainly would be my answer to that.
Yeah, Jamie, if you have any questions,
No,
follow.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Oh, great, great. All right, thanks, Jamie. I got a question for you, Robin, that I want to go ahead and read out loud, and then also after that question that you responded to Roger, I want to go back up there after this one and read that one. But coming from Lucia Reed, she wants to know, who is also a radio show host herself, she wants to know, Robin, do you believe that we manifest what we focus on? So if we deliberately focus on the positive, that belief will protect us and create positive experiences for us?
Yeah, and what I said is, to some degree, remembering that we are human and certain things are out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
All right? However, the more we focus on these positive things, even in the poorest of outcome, the spirit can remain whole. The problem becomes when we allow our negativity and these circumstances to break our spirit. And that's a shame. Now, there are some things we can't control. There are people suffering with diseases, horrible diseases, cancer. Do we say, well, if only you were more positive, you wouldn't have that? How's that edifying? How's that helpful? All right? So what we don't want to do is kind of go in the other direction of the spectrum here. But what we can say is, if you use this positive thought process, whatever happens to your physical self, your spirit will be okay. Now, and I've seen some remarkable things. I've seen people actually turn their cancer around. But even if they don't, there's an equanimity, and that's the word I've been looking for, equanimity, in being positive, in focusing on what we can do in that moment of time, and not necessarily to change the circumstances or feel badly if they don't change. And one of the things I speak about in my book that I really have a hard time with is this shame-blame mentality, and I call it harmful faith. When faith becomes harmful, when it tears you down, when it invalidates you or makes you somehow responsible for your pain, I cannot agree with that. But that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. So the equanimity is there when we are more powerful and more positive and put out what we want to do and let things fall where they may. There's no judgment in that.
Well said. Well said. Now, going back earlier in the show, we were talking about forgiveness. A question came through about forgiveness that is a really, really good question. And it may sound a little bit repetitive to the individuals that were here, and you answered it in the chat. And the question was, do you believe that forgiveness must begin with ourselves, forgiving ourselves for past transgressions, both real and perceived?
All right, say it again. Say it again, because I got part of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The question was, do you believe that forgiveness must begin with ourselves, forgiving ourselves for past transgressions, both real and perceived?
Absolutely. And as human beings, we will always fall short. We all have our shadow selves, every one of us. So, yes.
May I ask? We all do have our shadow selves, but is it impossible for humans to be perfect? Or is it possible for humans to reach perfection?
Well, I don't know, and I'll be honest. I don't know. For me, personally, I'm not looking to be perfect right now in this life. What I see this life for me is it's a school. And
Yeah,
everything that I do, for good or bad, is a lesson to help better my soul. Somehow I think, and maybe this is the answer to your question, if I reached perfection now, how boring. I'm here to learn and grow through my lifetime until the day I die. I don't think
but
that
I
perfection
mean,
would be something
I
I would
see,
even think of somehow.
I see totally what you mean, but I also think that you're thinking of perfection on terms of our definition. I mean, maybe perfection is divided, so perfection is a perfect balance of sort of wrong and right. And also, if we, I mean, also humans are obviously, well, not obviously, but each each man, I do believe, is a reflection of an inner consciousness. So like it's like a hall of mirrors, and every man is a mirror, you know. So if every mirror is without ridges, then the reflections are perfect, you know.
You know, you may have a point there.
Is that not what we?
Yeah, and that's a wonderful point.
Good question,
Excellent,
Jamie. Good question.
excellent. Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying in that there's a form of perfection in that. Uh, Good point. Possibly you're right that perhaps in some ways that is something we can attain to. But to me, it's a daily walk. It's moment by moment. My grandfather used to put this very well. He used to say, "Yesterdays are gone. Can't get them back. They're written in stone." Right? Tomorrow, we don't know. All we have is this moment, and the second I breathe out, that moment is a past.
Hmm. Now,
So if we try to live right in that moment, there may be perfection in that balance somewhere. So excellent point.
it is a great point, and
Yeah.
it's prompting a number of other questions about the definition of perfection, i.e., maybe it's difficult for us to understand in the year 2013, but I suppose to take the male gender back in the days of ancient Spartans and Greeks, I suppose at this time the perfect man was very much of a war god, a warrior, and they defined his good deeds and his contribution to society by doing things that we consider to be absolutely terrible, the types of things that we see going down in our modern times. And now in modern times, we see people that are more and more quote unquote good. What relative, what, I guess the question that people want to know is what is the standard that we are weighing one thing as good versus another thing as good against what? What is this perfection? As
And
it
that,
pertains to your book and the soul journey, I want to get your perspective on this.
well, that is I mean, it's such a heavy question. I mean, if you look at let's look at what the normal standard is. What is perfection? Okay. We look at Wikipedia for a minute. It says perfection is a state of completeness and flawlessness. It's literally a finishing. Now, if we look at it as this is the state of perfection, I don't know any human being who's quite reached that yet.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would be interested to hear is, what do other people think perfection means? To me, I'm not, as I said, I don't think in those terms. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm trying to live one step, one day, one breath at a time, learning from what I can and growing every day. So to me, perfection is not something I think about attaining to. It's more the journey. All right? And I believe there's some quote about that, but that there's something in the journey and in the highs and in the lows of this journey that I think brings an element of wonder and surprise, and everything's different. Somehow, to me, if I were perfect, it would end all that.
Robin, I want to ask you a question going back to probably the early chapters of your book. A question about how long. This is a question that we're going to get, and the question is, when someone decides to consciously make that effort to be on a soul journey, and they're becoming aware of their thoughts, they're becoming aware of their breath and the techniques that they're using. Can you give us, in a three-dimensional, we need it badly sort of way, a time frame before human beings start to experience an openness, success, we'll call it, or achieving what we'll say are results? Is there any way you can answer that question?
Wow, not really.
Okay.
I've been doing this for 39 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right.
so
May I interject
no.
a point that I have on that statement?
Sure.
Well,
When you say that, I mean, humans, like I touched on in my last statement. I'm sorry that I've made so much interjection in this. By the way, I mean, you can mute me if you want, but when
not
I
even
mean
here, it's
humans, people tend to act in a collective. I mean, it's like mass hysteria a lot of the time, but these are manifestations of an unconscious will, and that is what you're talking about. I believe, anyway, that is the perfection that you're talking about, and it's not something like an individual human thing that people can attain to. It's that fact that no matter what happens, shit is always gonna happen because I'm sorry for swearing, but
It's okay.
people people are ultimately at the mercy of the unconscious will of the human soul. Like they're there. It'll always happen the way that it's supposed to, and it's always gonna happen in the perfect way because perfection runs throughout. It's like people are imperfect, but humanity, man is perfect. I mean, men are imperfect, but man is perfect. So, like, when people are mistreated, they react, and that is the balance to the equation. So it's not like, oh, we should strive to be better. We should strive to be better. No, we are perfect. What is happening is we're being pulled down and we're rebelling against it, and that is then being played against us as being an imperfection, when in fact it's us striving to be what we're supposed to be, which is in fact not man, but what I believe to be God, you know?
great.
Very, very interesting. And it reminds me of something that somebody has said to me before, which is that we're perfect beings living in imperfect bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that is a wonderful point to make. And in terms of how long, is there a time frame? No. You have to understand that each individual has their own path. And there's no way to determine time frames. Some people learn quickly, some people learn slowly, some people go off the path, some people go to the right, the left, up, down. I don't think it would be reasonable to put a time frame on it, because then again you would get into this mentality of shoulds. I don't like shoulds. I
Right.
should be at such and such a point.
Great
Why?
question, Jamie. Great question. Can I ask you something, Robin?
Yeah.
Going through the and we have the link out there. There is a wiki tease for those people that want to kind of get into your book a little bit, and also the Amazon Kindle or on Amazon.com. Those of you that want to search for the book or find the link in the show description, you can also get a little bit of a teaser there as well. And I think that you'll be able to read Robin's words in the black and white about where she's coming from on some of these things. But as for your book, there was a question that when I was going through the wiki tease, I wanted to ask you something that may also be another difficult question. If we think about the Hermetic dictum and we think about as it is above, so it is below. We know that a lot of us have these common factors as human beings. We all need to breathe air. We all need to eat food. We may not all necessarily like the same food. We were all born of a mother, a female individual. These are things that are on the below, we'll call it for the sake of this example. Do you feel in your intuition, does your intuition tell you that there are certain practices or certain techniques that may or may not benefit people more than, let's say, the technique of, oh, I don't know, something silly. I used one the other day, like washing only red cars while standing on your head. My point is, are there techniques that you feel like are going to be a little bit more universal, following the fact that we realize there are some laws? Can we take some really good building blocks and make a foundation out of it? What do you have to say about that when we're talking about meditation and your breath work and your lucid dreaming? If you could just give us just a little tease about what you have to say about that in your book, I think we'd like to hear that.
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, yeah, obviously, you want to have some building blocks, and no, I don't think standing on your head and washing red cars.
Only red cars on your head.
No, only red cars. No. I think that when you're talking about dealing with this area, all right, there are going to be certain universal laws. For example, a universal law might be that whatever your system is of belief, whom or whatever you connect to is going to be essential. All right? So I leave that open because I don't think there's any right or wrong way to connect to Creator, despite what, you know, we have religions that say you can only connect this way. You can only connect that way. It must be this thing that you do. You must be doing that thing. My feeling is we all are seeing the Creator through the face Creator shows to us. So who am I to say this is wrong? But I think there are some universal laws. Number one, to connect to your source. So that would be a universal law. Number two, the breath work to me is a way of pushing my ego, pushing Robin aside, and getting in an open, calm, receptive place. Now, for some other people, it might be different. They might do meditation, transcendental meditation, for example, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, any sort of universal way of working with energy, I think, is going to be important. So that's probably a universal law. The other thing in a universal law that I would say is first, do no harm. And harm meaning that you're doing something that would not be to someone else's best and highest interest or your best and highest interest. Mm. I'm not one for route. So, you know, whether it's standing on your head, twirling, washing red cars, or saying the same thing 20 times over repetitively, I'm not so sure that gains as much. Did I answer your question?
Robin, do you consider the rule of love everything unconditionally? What number would you rate that? Because
a number, like from 1 to 10.
Where do you place the value of unconditional love?
You gave your rule number 1, and I do agree. But on my practice, I do believe that you can't go anywhere unless you have ultimate love for everything. Because with love comes trust, and you'll never get anywhere if you don't trust and love everything that you see. Because you'll come into contact with things that you cannot fathom. So you have to have ultimate love and ultimate trust. And if you can't have that, if you can't trust something, then you're not going to get any further than your own feet, in my opinion. but I would like to hear yours.
Absolutely great point. I think that you're right. You know, one of the things that is also, you're right, the universal law, one of the first has got to be that love. First of all, love for ourselves and forgiveness, which somebody brought up. Physician, heal thyself. So, loving yourself, loving others, loving your source, whatever that source is.
Right.
I think if we're going to put it in a tie, that would be my first place tie. All those things would go in number one. I don't think you can move forward with anything without that. Excuse me for getting a little biblical here, but it fits. In 1 Corinthians, it says, without love, we're clanging cymbals, tinkling brass. We're not.
It's funny you should mention Corinthians. Let us not forget Jacques de Molay.
Just happened to come to my mind because there's something about that prose. The idea that without love, we're basically useless. So your point is well taken.
Thank you.
I do have a question I'd like to ask you, Robin, going quickly back to the beginning of the show, and this comes from a personal note from a personal encounter I had with an individual about a week ago. You were telling the listeners when you experienced an interaction with your father in an altered state, and you guys were able to exchange intelligent communication, and you met him in the water. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yes, he was sitting in the water.
I want to ask you, did you have any, without clouding where I'm going with this, did you have any intuitions about him being in that water, any intuition about the symbolism about that water in any way? What do you have to say on that? I want to get your feedback, and then I'll give you a little bit quickly where that question's coming from.
Absolutely. I felt the symbolism was, it was a cleansing water, it seemed to me. It was like, you ever see these brooks and the water just kind of rolls over the rocks, and the water's clear, crystal clear, and you can even see to the bottom of it, and it's just, and smells good, and it sounds good, and it's free-flowing. To me, that water was the water that heals. It was like everything that was sad, everything, the loss, the grieving over losing my father, all the stuff that he had gone through in the state of dementia, every negative thing was just being carried right away. That's how I took it.
Okay. The question is coming from an instance of culturally, I'd like to get your point on, I know that this is also going to be a difficult question, but do you address the idea in your book in any way about what we would use the word source, and what would that look like, and do you feel that it is a best relayed to our minds in this three-dimensional experience as water, or as a fluid, liquid, something less related to the symbolic cleansing of yours and your father's communication? Do you have any thoughts on that from anywhere in your experience?
I don't see why not. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is something about the fluidity of spirit, and you know, that sense of being whole or clean before Creator, being loved, being encompassed by Creator, so, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I don't see why not. I think that would be a wonderful analogy to put forward.
Room. Robin, I want to give you the opportunity, if there was a question that you were hoping that someone would ask, or a question that I did not ask you, please go to that moment in time. Let us know if there's something really important, because before I did this show, I felt like somebody out there was going to hear something tonight that they desperately needed to hear in the very, very beginning, with the profound experiences of you communicating with your parents, and having that is very, very tangible, and so often it's hearsay, but it's inspiring. It's your experience, and it's true, and it's impacted you. If there's anything that we didn't get a chance to let you speak on, I'd like to get that from you at this time.
Well, the only thing that I would say is, in my book, there's a lot of things that I think you'd be interested in reading. We touched on some of them. There are some vision journeys to nature that I think you will find inspiring. There was a question to Mother Earth, for example, in which people have asked me, do you think Mother Earth is angry? Is that why all these terrible things happen? And I went to Mother Earth and said, well, are you mad? And basically Mother Earth said, no, I'm not lashing out. My body is responding to damage. And yes, the climate is changing and all these issues are happening. But that's not because I'm lashing out. And she went into, how cancer is a process in the body. And you don't blame your body because it's responding to an invasion, Right. So I think that you might be interested in some of this. There's some wonderful things about rebirth and renewal and transformation in the book and soul journeys. There's a lot in here that I think that would really stir the soul to good thoughts and asking questions and seeing things from another perspective that's unique and different, even if you don't necessarily agree. And there'll be people who don't agree. So that would be the only thing I would say. This has been phenomenal this time here, and the questions and the things that have been said, wonderfully provocative.
Very nice, yes.
Just fascinating conversation. I couldn't have asked for a better forum right now with these people and what they have brought forward and how my book fits into this.
And Robin, we posted something together yesterday. I want to get it out there on the air. You can get an autographed copy of Robin's book. You can get the details on Robin's Facebook page, which are the links are some here in the chat, and also on the event show page. Robin, how can they connect with you on Facebook real quick? And then right after that, tell us about getting an autographed book from yourself, please.
Okay, well, if you go to Facebook, just look for Robin Littlefeather, and that's my Facebook name. You'll find me on there. You can also look for Abiding Love or Abiding Reiki on Facebook. So those, and there's also the Heart Song of Anekehee. So those are ways to reach me. Right now, if you go to facebook.com/Robin_L_Hannon, that is my personal homepage that you can connect to. All right. And then if you wanted the Reiki site, it would be facebook.com/Abiding Reiki, one word. And then for the wedding site, it's facebook.com/Abiding Love Weddings, all one word. And the Heart Song is facebook.com/The Heart Song of Anekehee, all one word. So any of those ways are ways to reach me. In terms of the book, if you're interested, I have 27 copies. The normal price is $24.99. I'm getting it out there for $18 plus shipping, signed, sealed, and delivered. You can go through PayPal if you have it, or if you want to do it by check, that's fine too. You can either let me know inbox on Facebook, or you can email me at Robin Anne Hannon, and that's ROBINNEHANNON.
And for those of you, if you were not writing any of that down, please just take one moment at a time. Get in touch with me, and I will get you all of Robin's details. So if you feel like it's easier to just send me a private message, I will get everybody in touch, and I'm more than happy to do that. Robin, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out to come with us today. I appreciated it the last time that you were here as well, a couple years ago. Check out Robin's YouTube channel as well. Very, very informative. And you can establish that link with Robin, and any questions about those links, you will find it through this show. Robin, is there anything else that we should say in closing, anything that just speaks to your heart that we ought to just say before we wrap up?
All I can say is thank you all for an absolutely wonderful experience on here and being so
Robin,
incredibly interactive with me.
Let's say, You're perfect, man. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Well, thank you, and so are you. And I am just really, really stoked about how wonderful people have been, and your kindness and your generosity and the time that you've spent here with me means the world to me. Much appreciated. And Lucian, thank you. You are the best.
You're welcome, Robin, and I appreciate you having come back on the show and the relationship that we've been able to reconnect here recently, share some stories, and you've been able to grant some insight into my life personally on a personal level, for which I'm very grateful. And for those of you that want to establish that type of connection with Robin is another good reason to contact her, because I have been very well helped in some of the conversations that we've had prior to setting up this show. I'm going to go ahead and end this broadcast here. What is going to happen for you listeners who are hearing me talk about ending the broadcast is we will be here in the Hangout. Those of you that want to go may go. Those of you that are going to stay, and those of you who want to listen to the show in the future, you're going to come to the Google Hangout. Some of you will be there, and some of you are out there on YouTube watching this live YouTube event. We
Hang
see
on,
you.
so if I don't close this site, I will be on the Google Hangout.
You'll be right on here with us, Jamie. If you don't, as soon as I end this broadcast, there you go. So with that, Indigo Children Radio listeners, here we are on the YouTube live broadcast platform as opposed to the Blog Talk Radio platform. And I appreciate it. You know where to find myself. And once again, Robin Hannon, thank you so much for sharing your insights and talking about your book. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was. Man.
All right then, folks. Everyone have a good night. Have a happy Friday the 13th, 2013.